Rockbound is structurally built to last. Why was that important?
Well, I think, for a starting point, the land that we purchased here was untouched at the time we bought it. And out of respect for the land and the environment, we wanted the house to be lasting, to also reflect the heritage of the Nova Scotian coastline. When you travel through various towns throughout the province, you see the heritage and the legacy of generations past with the buildings that are still standing after decades and still functional. And we wanted a home that respected that tradition and also made a minimal impact on the land because it stood the test of time.
Your property was designed by renowned architect Omar Gandhi. So there are many unusual elements and there's a lot of beauty in the property. But when you think about that, what is the one element of this build that you're really proud of?
It's interesting. I don't consider myself a creative person, and my wife and I tend to be more function over form people. And that was very much a focus from the start, and I think a bit of friction with the architects who are form over function people. What we wanted to achieve out here and what we did hold fast to was to have a home that reflected and respected the landscape. Bring in materials that, if not organic, reflect an organic feel, that are not, how can I put it, they're residents on the landscape. They're not uninvited guests. And this house, we believe, fits the landscape. It respects the natural topography, the way that the water bridges to the forest in behind. And effectively, that was our mainstay. The functional piece, well, we got that too. The house works like a dream, and there's very little wasted space, but I'm not sure that is the selling point for the most part.
You must have a front row seat for any storms that come by. What's it like to be inside Rockbound in the middle of a storm?
I don't think one can ever prepare for a storm and the power of Mother Nature. It would be like sitting in the front row seat in an IMAX theater. You are immersed in the visual power and the auditory power of the storms. You see it, you're standing in the middle of it, watching these storms happen, yet safely distant, albeit only separated by panes of glass or the structure itself. It's like being in the eye of the storm, but with the comfort of knowing you're protected from the storm and simply a spectator.
I know that you and Kat spent a great deal of time meticulously planning a lot of the finishes inside. What sort of inspiration led to the finished product inside the home?
Oh, it's interesting. We're trying to understand the language of architects when we first engaged with Omar and his team, and how best to articulate what it is we were looking to accomplish. We're modern people. We wanted a modern feel, but it needed to be warm and welcoming. And so we coined this phrase, warm modern. And that very much was how we presented it to Omar and his team. They seemed to get it really quickly, and whether that's because they're just that good or it was a term they were familiar with, we don't know. But we wanted the house in every room to feel welcoming, to feel that you were part of the room, not just a guest in it. And this is our home, and we feel at home.
What do you love most about your amazing kitchen?
If I go to how I'm hardwired, it's function. It is well organized. It is accessible. All the appliances are where they need to be. And we're able to keep a clean countertop and look to the kitchen. But it's more importantly, it's warm and inviting. There's a cliche, the kitchen is the heart of the home. Well, in fact, it is. It's at the center of the house. We are able to host guests and honor that timely tradition or timeless tradition in the Maritimes of the kitchen party, and it functions very well in that regard. I think the biggest thing though is the views. One way you've got the ocean across the dining room table, and to your back or to your front, depending which way you're facing, you have the forest and the contrast of that environment against the one you were just looking at when you were looking out the windows.
When you first enter Rockbound, the foyer is stunning and it's purposely finished in a specific way. What informed your decisions on that particular space?
It's interesting because, the first thing you think of is just the function. You've got to get into the house somehow. And you need a place to store your things. But much like the spirit of the rest of the house, this sense of warm, modern, having an organic feel that was welcoming was critical. The natural light from the skylight was incredibly important. And the way the stairs almost float from the main floor up to the second level was critical to give you that sense of height and openness, but at the same time invite a sense of anticipation. You come in from the driveway side with the forest at your back. You know there's an ocean on the other side, but you can't see it. Maybe you can hear it a bit. And you get a chance to absorb that in first instance, unvarnished, as you walk from that foyer without a sense of what to expect. And that is the same thing with the remainder of that level of the house. You get it in first instance, pure and unvarnished, with a sense of anticipation, because you want to be there even as you're taking your coat and your shoes off. You just can't wait.
You talked earlier about the materials that were used on the exterior of the property to allow it to blend into its natural environment. And I think you explained why it was important. How difficult was it to source those materials?
Actually, it wasn't that difficult at all. I think it's more difficult to source the highly processed and highly finished materials that a lot of homes, particularly in cities, are often built with. This is eastern white cedar. We're wrapped in it. That's a tree that's native to the Maritimes in Nova Scotia, and it's sourced in New Brunswick. The Shishugibon wood is also eastern white cedar. Obviously it was prepared differently than the natural white cedar, but that was done in Ontario. We have natural metal that rusts naturally. It was very easy. We built the house during COVID, which meant that there were supply chain issues and delays, but it had nothing to do with the nature of the materials we were importing. It was really just the global impact of that pandemic.
And I think it carries your vision a step further, because not only did you want to be one with the land, but you used materials that are indeed one with the land.
That's exactly right. It's hard. Aside from a treehouse, it's really hard to live in the land that closely to something that reflects it. But having the eastern white cedar, which is reflective of the trees we're surrounded by, very much was our objective, is to feel part of the landscape. As I said, almost as you're a resident on the landscape. The house is a resident on the landscape, not an uninvited visitor. It is part of it, and I think that you can always imagine what it will look like, but it actually came to plan with Omar and his team. They saw our vision through our words, and were able to put together a natural, organic feeling home that respected the landscape.
The upper volume hovers out over the sea. What does this terrace, what does this volume say to you when you're standing here?
For me, it was a component of the home that Kat and I both discussed about being able to get another perspective for the location of this home and another connection to the natural landscape. For me, I feel very much connected to the water when I'm up there. When I look out from most angles, that's all you see is the water. You add to that the way the terrace catches the sound, the naturally occurring crash of the waves, or the silence that we sometimes experience when the waters are still. And it has a very surreal, almost out-of-body feeling to it. Now, add a sunset and a sunrise, or a rising moon and the crystal clear sky with the stars, and you take that view to a whole other level. It's really quite an experience.
Perfection. Thank you. I'm not sure if this is duplication, but I'll ask the question anyway. Maybe we'll get something from you that's unique. The primary suite and the upper level spaces really are a true sanctuary. Why did you choose the design that you chose for up there?
Well, we wanted to keep the rooms simple and functional, but warm at the same time. I don't think that there's any magic to how we set them up so much as we wanted to fully maximize the location of those rooms relative to the landscape. With the large windows, the immediate connection to the terrace, the ability to open the windows and have the sounds from the exterior come in and fill your ears, it really gives you a sense of comfort and relaxation.
What do you enjoy most about this location, about the point at Aspatagan?
Well, when we were looking for properties, maybe it's the hermit in me, I wanted to have something that was a bit more isolated, removed from the hustle and bustle of the urban environment. And we found a balance in this property. You can have that sense of being alone, that calm and quiet that the property presents, but you're part of a community. You're not alone. And for us to be with people who found a similar sanctuary here and who have the same appreciation for the natural beauty of the environment, that meant a lot. So we got the best of both worlds.
The view here changes every day, changes multiple times throughout the day and the evening. What is your favorite view?
Well, just a comment on that, it is ever changing. The time of day, the seasons, sunlight, cloud or fog, wind and rain, it is constantly changing. The colors of the sky, the way the water breaks off the rocks. So it's really hard to pick one. I also think about the extensive wildlife that we see, whales, dolphins, saw one today, the eagles flying by. There's just so much that's visually and visually stimulating that it's really hard to pick. But for me, I really love nighttime. With the sky full of stars and unobstructed by artificial light that you experience in the city, it's amazing. You surround that rising moon with the landscape and the ocean that we're a part of. It's really hard to beat.
Like everything with Rockbound, even your landscape plan was intentional. What was it you were trying to create when you looked at the landscaping surrounding this wonderful property?
Well, it started really with the initial excavation to build the house. We gave our builders strict instructions to minimize the footprint required to access the property and construct the home we wanted. As I believe I've said before, we wanted the home to feel part of the landscape, and you only get that by being respectful of what's already there. So after the home was built, we very much looked at reclaiming as much of the excavated lands as possible in the most natural state possible, using organic materials where available, planting vegetation that was native or near native, that would blend in. And over time, it's our hope, and I hope we're here to see it, at some point, that the house will look as if it grew from the landscape as opposed to was set upon it. And that was the extent of the real design. There's obviously some, I'll call it human use considerations, which we tried to minimize in their impact on the landscape and the reclaiming of that landscape from the construction phase.